So, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my favorite nonfiction books. I've been reading a little bit more nonfiction lately, and I've been talking a lot about nonfiction lately, so I figured we'd just do it. So I have a little stack here of 5 nonfiction books that I have read and enjoyed, and we'll just talk a little bit about them. So we'll jump right into my first book. So my first book I actually read back in high school. This is Positive Psychology by Bridget Grenville Cleave, I believe is her name. I started having an interest in psychology in 7th grade, so I was like 12, 13, like in that age range. That was when I really decided that psychology was the field that I wanted to go into and that I was really passionate about it. So this was the first psych book that I ever got myself. I got it before I took AP psychology in high school. I have multiple other psych books like this one. I have Essentials of Psychology, and I have some other psych books too, but I just haven't read them yet. This one, it's my favorite because it's nostalgic. It was a good book, but I just don't think that it was the best one for me to start with. The research in it is really not super up to date. Even then, it was not super up to date. Let's see when it was published, actually. That will be the real tell. Oh, 2012. So around the time that I read it, it was probably what was most talked about, but currently not the most accurate research. But this book introduced me to nonfiction reading, and it holds a special place in my heart. So, Positive Psychology, it was actually very cool. I do want to reread it just for the nostalgia, but there are probably better ones out there. I will always love this, though. So, there is my first book down. This is the only old one, so the rest of them are books I've read within the past 2 years. We'll jump on into those now. The next book on my stack is a little guy. This is the Amityville Horror by Jay Anson. If you don't know what the Amityville Horror is, I'll do a little synopsis for you. This book is about a family who bought a house, and the house had previously been the location of a murder-suicide, and the house was said to be haunted. This family didn't really know a whole lot about it. They were not from the area, and they also didn't really believe too much in hauntings. But they experienced so much paranormal activity within the small amount of time that they lived in this house that is, like, it gives me chills to think about it. And I'm not really somebody who's I'm not a non-believer in the paranormal, but I like to find the most scientific explanation for something, if you will. This book was chilling. The things that happened in this book, quite frankly, cannot be explained. They are far too much of coincidences to actually be coincidences in my mind. And they're also things that other people have said have also happened to them. There have been other people in the house that said that they felt it was haunted to an extreme level. This book was so good. If you really like the paranormal, give this book a try. It's nice and short. You could probably finish it in like a day or a weekend. Ooh, the movie, not as good, in my opinion. I own the movie now because I read this and within the same week saw the movie somewhere and was like, oh my god, it's a sign. I have to watch it. So I did, and I liked the book a lot more. But still a very good read. Ooh, even thinking about it creeps me out. So we're gonna move on to my next one. So my next one is a little depressing and a little bit difficult to talk about, but we're gonna talk about it anyway. Next is this beautiful book, The Lady in Gold. Now, this is by Anne Marie O'Connor, and it is about Gustav Klimt and his paintings and what happened to them during Nazi Germany times and the families of the people in them. Like, there's so much that comes together in this book. I did find it to be a little bit slow. It was a 3-star read for me, so I did like it. But it was a little bit slow and difficult for me to read. Now, I have been studying German for about 8 years now, so the German vocabulary that was in here I had no issue with, but I think if you don't previously know some of that, you might have a little bit of trouble with it. There are, I believe, in some parts, little notes. Oh, maybe not. Oh, there may not be. But there are like little pictures and explanations of them. It does not look like they have footnotes to tell you like translations and stuff like that. But there's not too much German vocabulary in here. If you have trouble reading about like Nazi Germany though, might not be the best read for you. I did not go into this book knowing it was like a Nazi Germany type history book, and it was very jarring when I realized what it was. But it was very well told, and it is a beautiful story of families staying together and this painting just being so well known and so loved. And I don't know what else to say about it, honestly. I don't want to talk too much about it just because it's not a fun thing to talk about in world history. But this is still a good book. If you like art history or like World War II type history, you might really enjoy this book. It was okay. But if you have trouble reading nonfiction, definitely don't start with this one. This is like the most nonfiction books I've ever read, if you can understand what that means. But we're going to put the depressing books down and start talking about some happier books. So we'll jump on into those. This next book is about one of my favorite things in the entire world, of Orcas and Men by David Newart. There it is. There's his name. Orcas are one of my most loved creatures on the entire planet. They are so amazing, so beautiful. The psychology of them is so amazing and advanced, and I just absolutely adore them. I've been in love with orcas for years. Dolphins, not so much. I have some beef with dolphins. But the largest dolphin in the dolphin family is my love. I absolutely adore orcas. If you have seen Blackfish, Free Willy, like anything like that, they're talked about in this book. And this book is actually pretty easy to read, all things considered. It has a lot of like anatomy talk and very like National Geographic, Animal Planet, like that kind of language. But it is so fun to learn new things about really anything, in my opinion. I love to learn things. I don't know if that's just a me thing, but I absolutely adored this book. This was a 5-star read. I loved every single minute of this book. There are so many pictures. I'm trying to find you a cute little orca picture. Like, oh my god. Look at that little baby. I just love them. And I really enjoyed learning more about well-known orcas that nobody really talks too much about. Now, of course, Tilikum from Blackfish was a big figure in the orca world with everything that happened at SeaWorld. But you should not take that behavior as an example of the entire species, in my opinion. It's very situational. They're very intelligent, very emotional creatures. And this book explains that so amazingly. It also talks about Free Willy and the whale that played Willy. His name was Keiko, and he is absolutely adorable and the most lovable little guy. He's not little, he's huge, but he was so sweet and so lovable, and he liked to watch movies. How cute is that? His favorite movie was Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Learned that in this book. I absolutely adore Keiko, and I could talk about this book for hours, like literally hours, but I don't want to bore any of you too much talking super in depth about it. If you're interested in orcas or other ocean life, try this book. Try this book. If you watched Blackfish and you were really moved by that, try this book. Please. I want everybody to read this book and understand that they are not aggressive, terrifying creatures like we have all been led to believe they now are. They will not bother you in their own habitat. They are very curious and very non-confrontational. So, 5-star read. Absolutely love this book. We're gonna jump into another book. I know I said we were done with depressing books, but the last one is also depressing. I apologize. We'll jump right in. The last book, as I said, is a little bit depressing. This one's a true crime. I love true crime. If you love true crime, welcome to the club. No, you got a couple little teasers of it. This is Slenderman by Kathleen Hale. I don't know if a lot of people really remember this case. I was alive and very conscious and very in the online world when this happened. So I remember when this actually happened. I remember hearing about it. I remember reading about it. And it amazed me then. It amazes me now. They made a Law & Order SVU episode based off of this story. Wow. Law & Order SVU is like one of my favorite shows. I've seen every episode, front to back, at least 3 times. My sister also really loves it. So we tend to binge watch when we're having a girls' night. But this book is about the actual case. Talks about who was involved, how it happened, why it happened, when it happened, where it happened. Everything about it. The legal terminology is easy to understand. They do a good job of explaining everything. This is a case that is extremely psychology forward and psychology based, and they also do an amazing job of explaining any psychological details. We learn about like the mental health history of like the parents, the kids involved. They talk about the aftermath, and if you follow stuff like this, you will see that there is more happening with this case within the past like 2 years. And I have a lot of opinions about it, but I'm not going to talk about them here because that's not what this channel is for. Me having a psych degree and having psych experience, I think, makes these reads a lot more fun for me. I can look at these and say, oh, yeah, I can understand how that would happen. I can understand how they would think that way. You also have to remember that these were kids. And thinking about children attempting to harm or kill other children is very unnerving. It's very stomach churning, but it is so interesting to look at. And stories like this are a big reason that I went into psychology and plan to do mostly work with children. I wholeheartedly believe in early intervention and early help. I think that a lot of things like this can be prevented if parents are educated, if teachers are educated, if community members are educated. Just having people know more about all of the warning signs and things like that, you could help somebody so early on. And I definitely do think that this entire event could have been avoided if there was more early intervention and if there was more awareness on the adults' parts. But getting ahead of myself, this I believe was a 4-star read for me, just because some of the language in it I was like, nah, or some of the ways that they implied certain psychological things I was like, not too into that. But this is still an amazing book. If you're really into true crime, give it a try. If you remember being a kid talking about Slenderman and seeing everything about it online, playing Slenderman games, read this book. And it might make you think a little bit more. I definitely remember thinking about Slenderman as such of a joke. And it shows how even stupid little things online can affect children in such an insane way. But yeah, just give it a try. You might surprise yourself. So those were my books, my nonfiction books. I do love nonfiction. I have a special place in my heart for nonfiction. I know it's not for everybody, and it's not a majority of what I read. I don't know if other people really include true crime in the nonfiction genre, but it technically is nonfiction. It's stuff that actually happened that we're talking about. I do keep them separate. On my bookshelves. I have a true crime bookshelf up over here above my head, and I have a like general nonfiction over by my TV in the corner of my room, and I just like to keep them separated. I can't really explain why, but they just like have different vibes in my head, so they're a little bit segregated in that sense. But nonfiction doesn't have to be boring, and nonfiction doesn't have to feel like a job or a chore. If you are interested in something, reading a nonfiction book about it can really feed your passion for it, and you can learn so much. So I will see you on Friday, I believe. Yes, on Friday with a vlog. So happy reading. Have a good week. And I will see you next time. Bye.